Today is Rudy's birthday. In years past, we would always have a gathering at the house. He had a marzipan cake from Norway that he loved, and we would serve it every year. Rudy's last birthday that we celebrated was in 1974, almost a month to the day before he died. It was a huge, huge celebration. So big, in fact, that he had to celebrate it in 2 shifts in his apartment on 10th Street in New York. Blanche and I were in the first shift, and we were all told to go. I don't know who came to the second shift. I think it was the celebrities. But it was really, really joyous. It was such an extraordinary sense of how many people loved and celebrated him. And there were a lot of very well-known New Yorkers who came to see him, to be part of that celebration, but also often were part of his life. And I've now probably given 80 talks about Rudy directly on his birthday and his Samadhi day, which is next month. And you know, it's always hard to find something new to say. But it's more and more clear to me as I get older how essential and foundational the work that he gave me, and we all have shared, how foundational and important it is. It's hard to understand when you've only practiced one thing, what other groups do and what they practice and what their foundational methods are. I visited a number of them over time in India and elsewhere, and they're very abstract to me. This one is very concrete. Rudy was very much of the world. He was very aware that we, especially in the early days, were a very undisciplined, incomplete group of people in every way. We just were starting out. We had bad habits. We had no real understanding what we were heading into. But we knew something, and I'll tell you what we knew, that Rudy was a force of nature, and unlike anyone any of us had ever met before. You meet some of these people along the way in life, they kind of hit you like with the dynamic force of their personality, their assuredness, their sense of knowing. And Rudy certainly had all of that. But he had something bigger, something inexpressible, inexplicable, and yet immediately experiential. And I'll tell you, when I first experienced it, I was in his class on Hudson Street in New York. And I was sitting in a chair, having been initiated into the practice just perhaps a week before. And I think I've explained many times that my initiation into the practice was simply sitting on the curb over the subway grating outside his store next to the Village Vanguard in New York. And he just told me in 3 minutes everything I tend to tell in half an hour or an hour about how you do this work. But I kind of, not that I got it, I just said, okay. It sounded really important. Again, the force of his nature made it important. But I'm sitting in the class on Hudson Street, and he looks at me, and suddenly I think he just shook his head, and the next thing I knew, I was lying on the floor. It had never happened to me before. And I was not the only person who had an unbelievably powerful reaction to Rudy's energy. As I've explained before, I learned pretty quickly why most people sat on the floor. Even though I would fall off a chair pretty regularly in the beginning, I never got hurt. I always liked back support, but I'm telling you, learning to sit cross-legged was important because every time Rudy looked at me, I would experience a transformation in my energy that was fundamental. I was being remolecularized, rearranged, reconceptualized on some level. Rudy at some point told me I was being reparented. But I knew that whatever it was that he was doing to me, there was nobody else I had ever met who could do that or would do that or even could explain the possibility of what he was doing. You know, and I met all these great teachers in India, and, you know, from the Dalai Lama on down, and they were all terrific in their way, but they all had ideas and concepts and things they could express, sometimes with great eloquence. But Rudy would just look at me, and my energy structure shifted. It rearranged itself, and I could feel it rearranging itself. And he made it possible for me to go to places inside that I had never had access to before, or if I had access to, I didn't understand and appreciate what it meant. I always had something of a heart, and it was transferred to me from my grandmother and my mother. And I had that, and I could go into my heart and feel things pretty much at will, but I didn't know the value of access to that space. I didn't have a great mind, but I had a little bit of a mind, and I could go into my head and I could begin to see things about life and the world that were not what everybody else was seeing, as far as I could tell. I was looking at it from different angles, perhaps. And in looking at it from those angles, I realized that I didn't see life exactly like everyone else. And that kind of brought me closer to Rudy, because I could tell he did not see life like anybody else. He had a depth of perception that was so potent and so powerful that he could look at people and know them. He could feel their energy field externally and internally, and he could work like a technician to rewire, rearrange the molecules of people so they became other than they had been. He also knew that once he rearranged those molecules, people would often fight like mad to put them back the way they were. And so I've learned this as a teacher through Rudy. Patience is essential, because people claim they want to grow and they want to change and they want to open, but they do everything they can to close and to reconnect to what they were rather than what they can be. And he told me, have patience. And he would go back and rearrange these things over and over in people until in many people it took hold. And when it took hold, people were different, meaning they had deeper access to themselves, to their deeper, profound selves. And when you sat in class with Rudy, you could feel, as he worked with everyone in the class, that somehow you were part of that totality, that he was working with us. When he worked with you, it amped up, but it radiated out. It cross-pollinated. It gave everybody something to walk away with from that class. I never walked out of a Rudy class the person who walked in, ever. I was always a different person. And I treasured that practice. And I did it for years, and as religiously as anybody could do a practice. Rudy said, sit every day for the rest of your life. And I sat every day. I always made space, no matter whether I was traveling, no matter what was happening. I sat down and I connected to this energy through what seemed like an absurdity, which was a photograph of Rudy. But it worked because this force of nature was contained even in the image of Rudy, because through that image came a connection to the person, to the being that was transmitted to me. As I said, probably many times, I did this sitting for 44 years. And then, forgive me for endless repetition, but there came a point where I said, I'm not getting anywhere. And I stopped sitting. It was really interesting because stopping sitting became the doorway to what I was looking for. And, 2 weeks later, I had this awakening. I don't call it the awakening. And Rudy, for one, must never believed in enlightenment. But I thought it was of some sort, because it was so profound that I was no longer reaching for this thing. I had arrived at it. And I had arrived at it by stopping trying to get there. That my own effort of trying, doing Rudy's practice over all that time, was in fact in the way of finally arriving at this awakening, which I thought at that moment was the culmination of Rudy's work, and it came from not trying. There's truth in this understanding of not trying. There's truth in it, but it's not really the full answer. Because what I realized after awakening, after realizing how minute Bruce was, how insignificant the molecularity of the Bruce energy was, that I was somehow entwined with and one with all energies, with everyone, that there was still a Bruce. And for 10 years after that awakening, I watched the world work, and I found there were still all sorts of residues, if you will, of who had been. And I kept trying to let go and let things be. But what I started to recognize was there was still foundational work to be done. That an awakening, as I said many times, is a movement from kindergarten to first grade. It is not a totality necessarily. And that what I kept coming back to was the chakra system, the energy system that Rudy had given me, that worked not only for me to go deeper and fuller and to more completely understand the dynamic of a spiritual expansion and a rising, but also to work with others. And it has been so clear to me over the last years, I guess, especially now, that this foundation that Rudy gave us, this double breath exercise, this ability to go into the chakras and expand them, is an ancient practice. He claims that it was first given to him when he had to go through an operation. I forget the reason of the operation, but he was 8 years old and he didn't want the third operation. And he ran out into a field away from the hospital crying. And these Tibetans came to him, a red hat and a yellow hat, and they gave him basically what we're doing. When he met Swami Nityananda, in a certain sense, he was blessed and acknowledged in his ability to transmit this profoundly ancient Buddhist teaching to others. And he did. He came back to America. He was on his way to New Zealand, but he stopped in India and met Nityananda by chance. He came back to America, opened a store, and started teaching this work. And we are now almost 50 years from when I met him. Actually, 50 years. And the foundational element of this practice is stronger for me and more essential than ever. The only difference, and this is really important, and I don't know that Rudy taught this difference. I don't know that he experienced it. But the difference for me is that so many people sitting with this practice are trying to get somewhere. They're trying to change the dynamic of their life. Now, let me tell you, one of the great things about this practice is it will change the dynamic of your life. It will give you the energy for a strong career, a good marriage, child rearing, whatever these demands are in your life. Rudy really fostered the development of consciousness in the work that you do in the world as a mirror of the work that you do inside. And that was a very foundational, fundamental teaching. But there is this idea that we all have of wanting to get there, wanting to get to that place that is other than where we are. And that's the foundational mistake, because what you arrive at, and I've said this to you now for years, but I say it to you again on Rudy's birthday, what you arrive at is not something other, it is this itself. You arrive at this, and it is an arrival that is so clear and powerful that everything you've ever been looking for is present now. This is it. As I repeated many times, this is it. This is all there is. There is nothing else but this, and this is it. Almost nobody that I know lives in this. Almost everybody is reacting to the thing wanted, the thing they're waiting to get to, the arrival at, the enunciation of something bigger, better, greater. Let me only tell you, it does not exist. And when it does exist or appears to, it's because it's in the material world, the world of stuff, the world of matter. The world of matter will allow you gradations of achievement and demonstration of achievement and all of these things. But in the end, they are all temporal, impermanent, and they will all collapse in on themselves and return to this other inner space that does not change, that only deepens and expands to accommodate the reality of what and who you are. Going inward, the gift that Rudy gave us, the mechanism, the chakra system, these inner doors that allow you to step inside and open your mind, open your heart, open your intuitive gut, to know yourself, to find the ability through your sex chakra to be reborn, to find the ability in your throat chakra to express the truth of being. These are all things that Rudy provided. I don't know where all these other teachers try to take you or what they try to teach you. Maybe they're sharing very similar teachings, but I can only tell you, having been a student of Rudy's for all this time, that even though I wafted into this other world of non-practice, what I arrived at in the end is how I would never have arrived at this space without Rudy's teaching. It is the most remarkable ancient teaching that we have been given for reasons I cannot explain. But if you use this practice, if you use this work, you will find your way, you will find the doorway into this very space. Nothing other than this space. This space. And if you want to learn about life, you want to learn about truth and reality and beauty and goodness and kindness, this is where it comes from. This space is the teaching space. It's the intuitive knowing space. It's what you grow from. And the growing that occurs is primarily an expansion, and it's also a profound acceptance of the what is. And for me, that is an ongoing teaching. And I have to say, it is a profoundly humbling teaching. Because the more you discover what is, the more you have to be able to do what Rudy said: surrender, accept, allow. You know, we're living in a period of such upheaval. And this past week, we had the inauguration, which followed the week before, which was an insurrection on the Capitol, and 2 weeks before that, and an impeachment coming down the road. These are the worldly things. These are very worldly. But I watched the inauguration, and my experience was so powerful, so full of emotion, a kind of joy, a kind of hopefulness, a kind of finally waiting for a breath of fresh air. It was really, really stunningly beautiful until it completely collapsed on me. It just went, and I felt an unexpected, overwhelming despair. I could not explain the despair. I could feel the emotionality of the transformation of our culture, but the despair overtook me. I have learned in recent time to not identify with these things. I had to watch it, but I also had to experience it. The experience was overwhelming. And part of me wanted to change it, to take a breath and go deeper, do something to it. But the teaching was, this is what is. And what I felt in a profound way was the danger of hope and the danger of believing in a future as opposed to believing in the present. That present tense is truth. Future is a projection. It's a state of being that will arrive in its own time, in its own way. But projecting a future as opposed to living a present is a source of great problem for all people. True hope is openness to the present. True hope is accepting the present. And this acceptance allows for the understanding that in a certain sense, it's all in something larger, that we are in good hands. We are in good hands now. Something is caring for us now. Projecting this into the future is a way of avoiding being present with the what is. And the what is everything in its time, everything in its place. It's all there. And if you are hoping for a positive future and a positive outcome, what takes place is that you deny the reality of the fact that positive and negative are part of the totality. And that by pushing for one outcome and then not allowing all outcome is in a sense a very strong ego direction. It's a very big part of who you are. And if you feel like true liberation is part of your existence, letting go of hope, letting go of future, letting go of a projection of things, and just allowing it to be what it is the doorway to release and freedom and acceptance and awakening and enlightenment. We cannot make the world in our image. We cannot find a way to think that it will end up being perfect. It is already that. And arriving at that place in yourself that is hoping for other, hoping for it to be different, is a problem in terms of your own development. What you are trying to find in your practice, in your open-heartedness, in your gut level experience, is not that the world itself will be better, but that the world already is what it must be. Opening to that, opening to what is. The world is a complicated place. It serves many functions. Many of them are very subtle and way beyond our understanding. We're all on this journey together, but the reality is, in and of ourselves, the deepest thing we can get to, we can arrive at, is the word Rudy taught us: surrender. Surrender to what is. Don't think you have arrived at a new world. Everything is going to be fine. Everything is different. We finally got there. It doesn't work that way. It's illusory. The reality is change is endless. Life is impermanent. And you are the very witness to that. You are not the person who benefits from it. And if you can go deeply, deeply into your heart and into your gut, you will witness the wonder of all of what is happening and the sense that it is in good hands. It is in good hands. Don't invest in the outcome. Invest in this moment. Be present. Witness. And then there's that Zen teaching, which I come back to all the time, which seems to me to be fundamental, which is aso. Aso. Even this. Even this. When it's really beautiful, and I watched the inauguration with such joy and such hope that things will flower in a certain way. And then the universe went like that to me and said, stop it. The universe is going to be what it is, and it will be this, and it will be that, and it will be yin, and it will be yang, and it will change in every possible direction. Sit still, take a breath, accept and allow, appreciate the what is, appreciate it for what it is, learn from what it is, go deep, and then go, aso, aso. That is the only real liberated response that you can find in life. You accept the totality. You love the beauty, and you can abhor the awfulness that comes out of physical manifestation. But the reality is, sit with it, be with it, and go. So this, for me, would never have been something I could have learned without Rudy, ever. The journey into this level of surrender and acceptance comes from a foundational, day-to-day practice of going deeper, going deeper, going deeper, and not to get to become king of the world or the greatest spiritual teacher or Swami, this or that. It's just to get to be you. You. Finally arrive at you. And what's the best expression of you? Well, it's someone who works hard, who's conscious, who loves people, who's good, who's kind, who's thoughtful. That's who you become if you're not already that. And you can become better and better versions of that, which is really what Rudy wanted us to have. He wanted us to have these really rich, full lives. And I know personally that I've had a rich and full life. I know many of you have rich and full lives. If you don't feel the richness and the fullness, it's not about making it other, it's feeling the richness and fullness of what is right now. Feel what's there. If there's a part of you that's going, oh, it's not good enough, it could have been this, it might have been that, get rid of that voice. You don't need that voice. Just really enjoy that apple. Just enjoy it. You know, walk outside. You know, it's, what is it, 70 degrees in LA today? I don't know, but enjoy that. It's 20 degrees here. And I'm enjoying that. You know, I go out to get the newspaper and it's like freezing. And I go, wow, wow, it's so cold. And that's the fullness of life. That's the reality of life. It's not wishing, oh, I wish I was in California, or I'm wishing I was in New York. It's wishing to just be where you are. If I had a wish right now, it would be that I could give all of you a piece of the marzipan cake that Rudy loved. It was one of the best cakes ever. Per Johansson, who was a student and is now a Swami, brought it from Norway. Rudy loved that cake, and we were able to find it in the local bakeries in LA. I haven't found it here, but it had the most delicious layers of jam in between and this wonderful sweet marzipan, green marzipan coating. And every year we had Happy Birthday, Rudy, written on it. And everybody stood around and sang happy birthday. And then we sliced it and we all shared in this moment that really was, in a way, imbibing the sweetness that Rudy represented. So this is my God knows what 40-somethingth talk about Rudy's birthday. I don't know that I've said anything new, but I want you to know the incredible thing about the sweetness of Rudy's birthday is that it is always new, that this energy is always new, that every time you discover this energy, it's like, oh, it's like it is an awareness that's just rising inside you. And Rudy transmitted that energy, continues to transmit that energy through any one of us who shares it with anybody else. And you don't have to share it as a teaching. You don't have to share it even talking about Rudy. You just take this energy and you find a way of being kind to people. Just find a way. I watched a movie last night that I think is coming on to Netflix in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's called Nomad Land. And I really recommend it because it's Frances McDormand living a life that is definitely not a life that most of us would look for. It is kind of rootless on some level, but it is connected to everything we're talking about. And it is a demonstration of what gentility and kindness looks like in the world. And the fact that we're all basically alone in this space. And as I get older and realize how small, in a way, life becomes, all I can tell you is it reduces itself down to the simplest of gestures and actions. And if you can find your way to that simplicity without thinking of yourself as having lost anything, that you can look at it as a gain, that you can look at the simple act of kindness as the most beautiful thing you've ever done in your life, you will arrive at, I think, what a lifetime of Rudy's work is about. It's really simple. It is not hard. It is not other. It is not something that will put you on a throne. or celebrate you. You will simply become a truly good person. So, thank you for gathering today. I wish I had cake to give you. I really do. But I love you guys. And I look forward to, twice a month visits. Let me just say, being a rebel that derives from one's personal anger, personal hostility, or desire to change the world or whatever it is not the same as being an agent of something greater and higher. And until you connect to that agency, until you connect to the directive of the universe, until there is something truly, truly guiding you forward, rebellion is personal and part of the yin yang of the world. When you're directed from deeply inside to act, and I don't mean emotionally, I mean something of a higher dimension. And for many people, they don't have a distinction between one or the other. But when you arrive at service, true service of life in the world, and you are being told moment to moment how to move and direct your life, possibly an act of rebellion of some sort would arrive. I don't know that to be a fact, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think Jesus turning over the money tables was motivated by something greater than the person. I can't be certain about anything, really. Certainty is something that has left me as a teacher. I think Rudy had it, and I really used to love it. But I find, honestly, and I've said this before, I have lost the ability to know anything through my mind or intellect. Whatever I know at all arrives and erupts within me, and it's all I have. And if it doesn't arrive and erupt, I am clueless. I can tell you this not knowing has proven to be more valuable to me than knowing. The idea of knowing is mindful. The idea of not knowing is to just be available to that which is and is the source of knowing. Arriving at that is a journey in which you prostrate yourself down to the world and you say, use me. That's really what you arrive at. That's all I can tell you. So certain questions about how to act in the world, I wouldn't listen to Bruce. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't listen to anybody else. I would try to find that directive inside. And that directive really does appear when you surrender you. When you let go of all of the stuff of you, this deeper underpinning of being rises up and expresses itself through the openness that you have made available through this practice. And when it comes up and when it expresses itself, it has essential ingredients. One of them is truth. Another is goodness. Another is kindness, compassion, empathy, love. All of that comes up through that. Beauty. The great artists, when they are producing, they are letting go of, usually, of their own ego-minded self, and art is arising. And when you see great art, you know it because it's not from the mind, it's not from the human dimension, it's something else. True beauty, true creation is something that is a gift that comes through the channel of our being. And the more open that channel is, the more we have to give. I would never have found that channel without Rudy. That's all I can tell you. And it's not a singular channel. It's a whole movement of energy. And the more you open the various centers and you align them up, the more expression that comes through. And you find yourself not being the voice of any of that, simply the mechanism through which that voice arises. And it is stunningly beautiful. And it is hard ride. It's complicated because stuff comes up. I have to say, this last week of despair made me say, how do I dare sit in front of this group of people that I love and talk? How can I, who despairs, share anything? And yet I am told that that despair is at the core of an enormously important teaching. Because the first question that comes up in feelings of that magnitude is, who is despairing? Who? And the answer to that is really always interesting. And I will tell you, there are elements of ego in despair, but there are also elements of godlike awareness. God knows us. God knows our story. The universe knows our story. It's really powerful. And it knows that it's going to be beautiful, and it knows it's going to be sad. It cries for us. It loves us. It does all of that because it's an emanation of its own true self. Despair is not just for people like me. It is a core element of the creative manifested space we live in. But as we go back deeper, deeper, deeper into the creation itself, despair becomes a doorway to that. It makes you knock at the door harder and deeper and ask for help. And that's what I did. And that's, I guess, why I'm talking to you today. They're lessons to be learned, and you think you've learned them, and then they show you a lot more to go. And so you just do it, and you get humbler and humbler, and you don't pretend to know anything, and I don't. So anyway, I tell you all this not to scare you off of the magnitude of this journey, but hopefully to inspire you to know that there is a journey. And the first thing I felt with the inauguration was, relax, you're in good hands. That's the first thing I felt, and I was so moved by that. And I still continue to feel that. But the despair required me to go deeper, because how can you be in good hands if you're despairing? That's the question. And the answer is you can. You can. Even in that, even in the depths of sadness and grief and sorrow, which the universe brings to almost all of us, if not all of us, in the sense of loss of everything you care about and love, in the giving up of having had and then having to lose everything, in the despair of that, you are in good hands. Learning that is what this ride is about. Trusting that, letting those good hands present you to a world, even though it is going to take away everything you care about and everything you love. That is the real practice. Saying, aso, aso. Try to arrive at that. It doesn't mean not to enjoy hope and the future and the possibility of things, but realize that don't create a false sense of expectation. The world will be and do what it does. It's a complex place. A lot goes on. Hope is fine, but let that hope be a moment of reflection on, we are in good hands. We will always be in these hands, always. And if you can come to that, if you can arrive at that, take a breath and say thank you. And then you will have to take that breath again and again and again, because we are human beings and every part of the loss is painful and true. And we will go through that. And the moment that you realize that it's actually here, that the sun came up, that there's fresh air outside, that life is available to you, something else arises, which is unbelievable gratitude and joy. Unbelievable. And then that magnifies the loss that will occur. So in a way, the more you get, the more you lose, but the dynamic of that, the vitality of that is so powerful. It's what made Rudy such a remarkable figure, because he embodied all of that energy. And that energy is the energy that we all have inside us if we dig deep and find it. It's a dramatic struggle. It is a real effort. It is a real goal to arrive at aso. we are in good hands. That's it, guys. That's it. If you trust that, if you can arrive at that, you can ride out anything. Not only ride it out, celebrate everything. Celebrate everything. And I mean, look, I could do 2 hours on celebrate everything, and I'm going to, cut out here. But I just want you to know it's all good. Okay? It's all good. Yes, a lot of stuff is awful, but it's all good. Trust me. I mean, I trust me. Don't trust Bruce. This thing that's speaking to you is trying to convey a message that Rudy tried to convey all those years ago. Do the work and you will find out. You're in good hands. The guys upstairs are watching over you, as Rudy would put it. They care about you. They will take care of you. Do it the right way, and you will be an expression of everything they represent, of the goodness and the kindness and the beauty and the truth of the world. If you don't do that, well, that's called suffering. And if that's your path, it'll change, I mean, according to Buddhist tradition, some 5,000 lifetimes from now. If you really want to do it now, just do it. Just assume. Are there still questions, guys? Can I get off?
Thanks, Bruce.
I have one question.
Yes.
A question?
Yes.
Yeah. But not everybody as lucky as you are to meet this remarkable individual or person, so that you can, reach that level of awakening. So what happened to other people? Many people who not have that chance, had that chance to meet that individual, so they can be transformed and be awakened.
Well,
What happened to those? Or did you search for the guru, or guru search for you? Which way is it goes?
that's always a good question. I mean, I did feel lucky meeting Rudy. I also went to India and traveled through Southeast Asia and Japan and elsewhere looking for teachers, and met a lot of teachers and did not find one. I mean, the Dalai Lama offered to be my teacher. I just said, I don't think you're my teacher. And he said, I understand. I said, could I come back if I don't find someone? He said, sure, which was really amazing. Other teachers said, no, you could not come back. Either you take me or you don't take me. And I looked at all these people, and then I found Rudy. I don't know how it happened, but there is a word called karma that may explain, lifetimes of searching and finally delivering what you're looking for. There's initiation that I talk about, which could, in my case, may have been the LSD trip. It could be certain kind of pain or loss for somewhere in your life. Something puts you on a path. If you're on the path and you're sincere, you will find someone who can give it to you. That's all I can say, or they'll help you find your way to that knowledge without going through them. You don't need a teacher, really. A lot of people can just sit down and really find life. Again, this movie Nomad Land, this woman, I mean, she had an initiatory experience of the loss of a husband, but what I watched was an innate goodness arriving. She may not celebrate that in herself. She may not celebrate it, but at the moment the time comes, the good hands that she rests in will reveal themselves, as they will for everyone, And if you are willing to be resting in good hands and not just controlling the universe with your mind and brain and desires, you will find that you have never not been in that space. And you don't need a great teacher to teach you that. But if you do have a longing for it, the system appears to be that the teacher arrives. When the student needs a teacher, the teacher arrives. That's an old axiom. That's all I can tell you. Right now, you got me. The nice thing about having me is that I've gotten out of the way a long time ago. So the thing that's coming through, I think, is pretty directive and pretty assured. And it directs you and it directs me to itself, which is this. It will carry us to this. Is this showing on? Yeah, it's on the camera. I was lucky, but we're all lucky. And anybody who truly wants to find this will find it. If you want to find something else, you'll find that. But I will tell you, if whatever you find is only in the world, rest assured it will be taken away. And that is a guarantee absolute. The world is impermanent. Buddha taught us that. Everything you arrive at in the world is temporary, on loan, and will be removed. And when it is removed, you will either go, no, no, and cry and yell and do all that, or you will go, awesome. It's pretty simple, but it's not like I was special. If you knew me as a kid in Detroit, you would go, not this guy. This is not a special guy. I was just a kid, just a person. I still am, truly, just another person. But I found I needed to do this journey, and that's what I've done. And I gave up all sorts of career things. Being a curator at a museum, I gave up a job at NBC News. I did all these things to go on these journeys, away from security, to find this, to keep finding this. And every time I did it, the universe went, check, good move, good move. Do what you have to do, find it. And that's all I can say to you. And anyone who's sitting here right now, you are right there. You are right there. Trust me. None of you who are here, sitting here, are not being held in the comfort of this space. None of you. You are already there. I don't know how better to express it. If you don't recognize that you're already there, all I would want you to do is recognize it, or they call it realize it. Go, oh, I'm already there. It's that simple. But it's when all that other stuff comes up in the brain that goes, but. Forget but. There is no but. You are there. I can look at every one of you and see that you're there. You are there. And not knowing you are there is just a mind event. Quiet it down, simplify it, you will find it is really present tense. It's not about the future. It's not about anything. You are already the thing you're looking for.